wanted to go through this real quick. It's going to be a little bit of a repeat for the Caulfield neighborhood, so sorry about that. You two have heard some of this, not all of this, but I'm mostly going to touch on the topics and then suggest that you, if you're really interested in that topic, you find the website or you get out, you go after that, because just about everything that I'm presenting isn't top secret information. I think, most everything. And unlike the Caulfield neighborhood, I put the 205 stuff up front in their meeting, and it took almost the whole meeting. So I've left it for the very last, just because it tends to have a lot of interest and people want to share something, and that's up to you if you want to do that. But I'll get through my agenda, and then if you want to keep talking about 205 and value pricing, tolling, whatever you want to call it, we can do that at the end of the meeting. So if you can switch. Thank you very much. So I just put everything into the usual 3 categories of utilities, transportation, and just program updates. So I'm going to go through a variety of topics. I think I've got about 20 slides, so try to be pretty quick. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, there we go, okay. So often folks don't know that we're working on stormwater projects, but we do a lot of stormwater projects as well. The Trillium Park Drive is one that it's in the McLaughlin neighborhood. It's behind the hospital. It's this roadway that had a landslide that damaged a home and the roadway. And we're not 100% complete, but we're pretty close up there. I think we're waiting on some street lighting, but landscaping is in. There's a new stormwater outfall there as well. Also in the cemetery, the Scattering Canyon, if you've been down to Scattering Canyon, there's a nice new channel through there. Before that was pretty incised and a lot of erosion going on, so we've since redone that channel. It's basically an outfall that comes out of, I think it's the Elyville neighborhood. I think that covers the Elyville neighborhood. But anyway, it's nice facility, nicely planted. Hopefully the landscaping will come in real nice and it'll go back to being what it is, which is a stormwater outfall and a pathway to Scattering Canyon. And then Beamer Way is one that's shown in the bottom picture. We haven't done that project yet. We're in the middle of permitting and design work for that. But that one is got a lot of erosion. There's some encroachment onto private property. This one's in, Bob, it's in the Park Place neighborhood. So Beamer Way, you're familiar with Beamer Way. It's kind of tucked in behind there. And really just the city's stormwater outfall has continued to erode and incise that creek. So we're going to repair that next summer. So if you live in the Rivercrest neighborhood, that area 10, that kind of pinkish purple area that's shown on the map there, it's one of our smaller sub-basins, but we've been doing a fair amount of work in that area for the last couple of years of sanitary I&I removal, and we're still there. We're still working on it, and so if you've gotten held up in the Lynn Avenue traffic control, you're probably wondering what that is. Well, that's sewer rehabilitation work. We're doing everything in the public right-of-way. So we're not doing any work on private property, but we do have a proposal where we would like to pursue replacement of the private sewer laterals on private property. And we've got a work session scheduled on January 10th. I encourage you folks, if you're in one of these neighborhoods, because these are the leakiest neighborhoods in town. And our next project area is area 8, so we'll be moving into that area. But what we're proposing is we take the sewer repairs all the way to within about 5 feet of the house. And that may vary depending on how difficult it is to get within 5 feet of the house. But the idea is to try to eliminate any infiltration and inflow that's currently inundating our sewer system. And so look for information on that with the work session on January 10th. Next slide, please. This is just a picture of where we're working today, or where we had been already working, work that's done. So everything that's in blue should be done. Everything that's in black is currently under construction. So they're working near the Gardner School. And so we'll do the sewer work this year, and then I've got another slide that talks about the street work, so that's coming as well. But next slide. Our drinking water program is going in the direction of getting very robust because we're pursuing a grant. Actually, it's a loan through federal government, and we look to be borrowing $14 million, and we're going to be matching that with another $14 million, so $28 million of lots of water line improvements. So cybersecurity, if you've ever thought about that, some you might hear about in the news, some folks have gotten into people's water systems and been able to actually control their pumps and reservoir levels. So we're trying to make sure we've got things that would prohibit that. We've got a lot of old pipe in Oregon City, so a lot of pipe rehabilitation work as well. And then some of the work that we did in the Malala Avenue project was we replaced the water lines under that new roadway with larger pipelines, but the places that we didn't work, so between, let's just say the, used to be the canned food grocery outlet, and that's where our big reservoir is, and Beaver Creek Road, that all needs to be replaced. There's a section between the new piece of Myers Road and the section that we just did in Malala Avenue. So quite a bit of transmission main work just to make sure we can, right now, when summer demand is at its highest, we really struggle to get water to that Henrici Reservoir or even our Boynton Reservoir. So we really need bigger pipelines because the pump station will move it. It's just we can't turn it up enough because we've got smaller diameter old pipes. So water system improvements, and really, so we're going to be moving on this work fairly quickly. In fact, we've got a project that's on Main Street that we're going to use some of those funds for that has already gone out to bid. So we're going to be in Main Street between 10th and 15th. So that will be a place to avoid in the not so distant future. But a lot of water system improvements as well as the sewer. So next slide. I brought this slide up because it came up. I think a lot of people don't realize that beyond projects, we do a lot of stormwater permitting, stormwater monitoring. So we have a state permit to discharge stormwater. So that outfall that you saw in the cemetery, the Scattering Canyon outfall, for instance, all of our outfalls are covered under this permit system. And it requires us to do a lot of things like street sweeping. That's a mandate to keep things clean, catch basin cleaning. We've got a lot of private storm ponds. They're development-driven ponds. This is one of them where we go in and we have to maintain those facilities. All that's done on a stormwater through our stormwater permit. We've got stormwater management plan tells us how we're going to do that, and we report on that information every year. And so there's just a lot of behind-the-scenes work that happens there at an environmental level that we would do. I mean, a lot of our website is dedicated to that. We also participate in some more regional programming. So you might see stormwater messaging on KPTV. That we participate, we pay for that, or some of the work that's going on up at the college with their education program. So your stormwater utility pays for all that work, and it's something we're proud of, but at the same time, it kind of goes unnoticed. DEQ pays attention to it, but they're about the only ones. Next slide. So some transportation updates. I am going to talk a little bit about the I-205 projects and what's going on there. Mike just mentioned he sat through a meeting with our Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, where they talked about the Regional Transportation Plan update. They update that every 4 years, I believe, and we're in the middle of that update. And this is region-wide. This is a long list of projects for Oregon City. We've got Highway 213 and Redland Road. That's a project. We've got the project along 99E between 10th and really the mill site. And I know we've got a couple other projects on there, but that regional transportation plan update, if your big projects aren't on that list, then they're not likely to get regional or federal funding to be able to be spent on them. So we think they're pretty important. We do have a Loader Road alignment, which is out in, let's see, that would be in the Caulfield neighborhood. So Loader Road is a project where we're trying to figure out how to get that alignment right and work with the properties that are there. So we've done that study. And another study we're working on right now is a loop trail study. That's really in the Gaffney Lane neighborhood. Is there anybody here from Gaffney? No Gaffney people here, but that project is really near the Gaffney Lane Elementary School in that area. So those two studies come before the City Commission. We're not quite ready yet, but they're coming. So look for those if you're interested in those projects. Next slide. We've gotten a lot of grant money. I don't know if many of you know Dana Webb, but she's our rock star when it comes to applying for grants. She's very in tune with groups like the C4 and the regional transportation folks. She tracks that very closely and knows exactly the right projects that Oregon City has on the books to build and how they fit with the criteria that Metro or the state or whoever it is that is offering those grants, and she's really done an amazing job. And one of the projects is the 99E bike and pedestrian improvement projects, and that's what's shown in the map here. It's really a pedestrian enhancement that we'd like to get designed. We don't exactly know what it would look like. It's a very, very difficult spot. So if you think of the existing pathway really from 10th to Dunes, that project right there is, we built those pieces. This is the missing link. So how do you get from 10th Street to the mill site on 99E? You can do it if you want to walk along Main Street, but if you want to walk along 99E, it's scary. So, what does that look like? There's a bridge there around 8th, between 8th and 9th. A lot of people don't even know that there's a bridge there. And then, of course, we've got the Highway 43 bridge that doesn't have a lot of opportunity to walk around. So trying to figure out what that looked like. Would that be something cantilevered? Would it be floating? Who knows what that could look like? So this study, the funding that we got for this, I want to say it's around $640,000. We got just to do the study work, the concept planning. So there will be, there's going to be some public involvement in that, but we're really kind of wanting to utilize the City Commission as the sounding board for that, rather than put together a group of stakeholders. We'll be reaching out to stakeholders, but we really think this one, there's not a lot of options. So, and it's going to be controversial no matter what we do. So we thought getting the City Commission at the table for that would be really good. The downtown quiet zone is really two intersections where 10th Street or Singer Hill crosses the railroad grade there, and then just a little bit over, it's kind of 11th Street, but there's a pedestrian crossing on the railroad there, just off of Main Street. Those two intersections, if we can build them safely so that pedestrians know there's a train coming and they don't have to worry about that, then the city would get rated as a quiet zone, and they wouldn't have to blow their horns every time they come through Oregon City. So there's a $2 million grant. We've yet to see the money, but state will have to administer that project for us. But $2 million, and we match that with another $600 million. Or we, not, sorry, 600,000. Yeah. Main Street, we're doing some ADA improvements that are just at the corners. I want to say it's 13th and 14th. Like I said, we're building that water line there. So we're going to be pretty heavy on Main Street here pretty soon. This one's, I think, going to interest a lot of people. So Holcomb Boulevard, we've been applying for a Safe Routes to School grant for a few different years. And we've learned that while it hasn't officially been named, we're on the list for $1.6 million. And we would match that with $400,000 and complete sidewalks really between the Sears property, where the Sears is building their development, and the grade school. So along that side of Holcomb, along the school side of Holcomb, there's a little bit of improvement on the other side, and there's a repetitive rapid flashing beacon going in there. So it should be a good project. And while it doesn't deal with all the sidewalk issues on Holcomb, it's a pretty big and pretty complicated section of sidewalk.
John, I saw on the email that I got that they're planning to still put that crosswalk at Oak Tree Terrace?
It's just up the hill from Oak Tree Terrace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that hump is in consideration?
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
And then a project that, again, many of you might not really even notice, but we've got signal interconnect. They're going to be putting the yellow backers on the signal heads on Beaver Creek Road, really from Maple Lane, actually Marjorie Lane, to Warner Milne. So that whole section will have new signal interconnect. We have some signal controller upgrades. And then, like I said, the safety yellow that goes around the backside of the signal heads will be installed in that project. So that's actually almost completely designed and ready to go out to bid. So they'll be doing that next year. Next slide. Paving, our main focus is Central Point Road. We get a lot of complaints about Central Point Road. We're not doing a boulevard project there, but we're definitely going to have to rebuild a lot of that. There's a lot of concrete panels in the road that we need to take out. So really the majority of Central Point Road will do. And then these other streets are those that are in and around Gardner Middle School. And some of it will be to repair some of the sewer work that we're doing, some of it, but most of it's about we want to put some more sidewalks in there so that students can utilize those sidewalks, get more sidewalks in there, and repave the streets at the same time. So we think we'll do as much of that as we can, with the first point of priority being Central Point Road. Next slide. This isn't our project, but I thought I needed to throw it up on the slideshow. South End Road. I didn't check recently with the county, but I know their signs suggest January 31st instead of November. I think it was 23rd or something that they had before. So what I've heard though is that they're struggling to get weather and concrete for the finished roadway. So all the walls are built and in place, and I haven't walked up there lately. Maybe some of you from Kenema have, but I think all the most difficult work is done. It's just the reason that they were providing was trying to get the concrete that they needed to build the actual road surface was a challenge. So we'll hold them to the January 31st, have it open, and then they still have always indicated that they wouldn't be done until June of 2023. So maybe they'll move that up a little, I don't know, but next slide. Real quick, if you haven't heard about the Sidewalk Replacement Assistant Grant Program and you have a trip hazard in your frontage, this is a new program for the city, and so far it's been pretty successful. The City Commission came up with this program. It really kind of blew up in the Park Place neighborhood, and from there, it's really become a program that I think we're finding pretty successful. They allocated $200,000 to the sidewalk replacement program. We've spent almost all of that on grants for folks, and for every one of those locations where you have a street tree that has resulted in a trip hazard, that qualifies. So there's some other obligations, but we've got it dialed in pretty easily for folks. It's a reimbursement program, and you could get up to $1,500 for each location reimbursed. Next slide. We do have a shuttle in Oregon City now that supplements the TriMet routes. The problem that we've had with that is it's a circular route and it takes quite a while to get around that route. That's what we're hearing from folks. So ridership has been lackluster, I would say, and we'd like to see more on there. This is a grant-funded program that is got some long-term funding, but we're just working on ways to make it more successful, making sure people feel good about riding it. So if you and your neighbors are interested, I think Park Place, we had it going up Park Place, up Holcomb. The idea is just trying to reduce that that turnaround time so that people will use it that much more often and supplement that with the TriMet route. But in making that decision, the ridership was just so low on Holcomb that they decided that they would try to shorten the route and see if we could get some more success in downtown Oregon City.
Is there only one bus?
I believe there's two. That's a good question. I'm thinking. I think there's two. Next slide. This is just winter weather's in the air, so this map hasn't changed much, but if you're curious about whether or not your street is going to see a plow or de-icer on it, many streets won't. We just can't get to every street. We try to focus on those steeper streets and those bus routes and routes more heavily traveled. But we do have a priority, so red, orange, and green priorities. Some of those, like Berkeley Hills Drive, some of those in Oak Tree Terrace, for instance, that are just so steep that trying to get folks out of there, we do try to make those a higher priority if we can.
You're still not getting my driveway, John.
Sorry, Bob. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so last two slides are I-205. Just know that, yes, there's a construction project going right now. I actually don't know a bunch about their schedule and that kind of thing with regard to their project, but there's quite a presence down there. They've got a lot of barges and they're drilling and doing all kinds of things down there. So lots of activity. Just know that that original project scope was from Stafford Road to 213. That has significantly been scaled back to phase 1A, which is pretty much just the bridge and the interchange at Highway 43 and the interchange at Highway 99. That project's under construction. They have allocated funding for that, but the rest of the project they haven't allocated funding for. So there's still a question on how to get that funding. And one of the suggestions to both pay for the current project and the future project is tolling or value congestion pricing. And so right now there's a lot of public comment on this, a lot of public opinions about it. We heard about a bunch of those from the Caulfield neighborhood the other night. And so, there's lots to be said. I'm the wrong person to probably say them to. We're looking at it and we're struggling as well because no other agency gets hit hard from this project with tolling than Oregon City. I mean, it will be gridlock. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna powder coat that at all. It's going to be problematic. Does that last forever? That's the big question. I don't really know, but there's not much you can do in Oregon City to deal with more trips. And the reason why there would be more trips is if they put a toll on the bridge, people might want to avoid that and try to find a non-tolled route. And there's really not too many places to go. I kind of wonder in the long run, if 205 is just screaming because they've got an extra lane and Oregon City is not because it's so congested, I do wonder if that's a short-term problem, but that's kind of what ODOT's telling us. But it's going to be very uncomfortable for a while. And so there's discussion about types of projects that they could do in Oregon City. The biggest problem is there's maybe some pedestrian improvements and things, some safety improvements and things that they could do, but it's not like you're going to put a new lane on 99E, right? So trying to get to Canby, for instance, is probably going to be, I've seen some of the forecasted numbers and pretty lengthy trips to get to places that didn't take that long before. So more to come on that. There's a lot of information on the web. They are going to be, we've scheduled ODOT for January 18th to come for a work session's on the 10th. That I didn't write down. It's either the 18th or the 10th of January that ODOT will be sitting before the City Commission and talking about their project and sharing that information publicly. I think they're also going to try to share some of the projects that they think might help. So look for that. Next slide, please. And then there's another conversation that's going on in the region. It's just starting up or it feels like it to me. You talk to ODOT staff and they feel like it's been going on for a while now, but the idea of regional tolling that would include all of 205 and all of 205 between the Columbia River and I-5, and I-5 between the Boone Bridge and the Columbia River. And so they've got a few more hoops to get through with that conversation, but they're just starting that off. There's a diversity and equity committee. There's lots of committees if you want to volunteer and provide more opinion on tolling in Oregon, and specifically in the Portland metro area. You know, feel free to chime in on that. We do have a voice, but obviously our bigger voice is on the I-205 tolling proposal. But this would be regional, so you can imagine Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County are all at the table, and all the jurisdictions within those areas. So I think that's my last slide.
Wow.
That took 25 minutes, sorry.
Any questions of John?
Real quick, on the quiet zone that you're working on, especially on when, you know, it goes down Singer Hill to 10th, you're obviously going to make that a quiet zone. What about timing on the light for when the train comes? Because that train comes really fast. Is there going to be a change with that at all?
Probably not. There may be new signalization there, better arms that would be longer, and the other problem is the ADA access there. So trying to get ADA crossing, we're still required to meet that, even though Singer Hill is not really ADA accessible. But so the intention there would be to kind of do a little bit of a switchback for the pedestrians. It would take them kind of parallel with the railroad. But you know, the idea isn't necessarily to slow the trains down. It's
Or
really,
at least maybe more of a wording for,
it'll be lights for sure, maybe bells. But again, keep in mind, the idea was to make it a quiet zone, but do that in a way that's still safe for pedestrians and vehicles. Because we've had actually more vehicle incidents along there than we've had pedestrian incidents, where people back up at Main right onto the track. So trying to get those arms to fall sooner is maybe what you're talking about. Yeah, I definitely see something like that happening. So good question.
Linda?
Same issue, quiet zone. Kenema has no roads that cross the railroad track. There are no sidewalks that cross the railroad track. Would there be any possibility of making Kenema part of this quiet zone as well? Because that is a residential area.
Not part of this quiet zone.
Not part of this one.
Not part of this quiet zone. And I think the railroad would just happily abandon those pedestrian crossings. But and if it were more of a fenced facility that didn't have just kind of free flowing crossing options, they would probably look more at not utilizing their horn when they cross through that area. But because there's homes and facilities, docks on the other side, that's not that practical. So, you know, unlikely.
John, I have a question. The Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan, several years ago, there was some discussion on sewer problems in relation to a live-work apartment complex that was proposed up there. Now, there's a whole bunch of construction going on up there. How did they solve the sewer problem?
Well, the city got a grant to install sewer about a mile from where it was down. It was down near Marjorie Lane or down near the community college. No, it was near the community by Claremont, where Claremont crosses right there. Yeah. That's where sewer pretty much ended. And through that grant, we were able to extend it down towards the towards the high school. And then that development paid for the offsite improvements to get it from where we ended it to their development.
So you were able to increase the capacities?
Yeah, it wasn't a capacity issue. It was the pipe didn't exist. So there was no way to connect it. It wasn't a capacity problem.
Well, that would be a capacity issue.
Well, okay. You're right, technically.
Leave it to Bob. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That was very informative, as usual. Okay, our next speaker is Raymond Rendleman, the editor from Oregon City News. Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you all for having me. I'm not as well known as John Lewis, so I'll just give a brief introduction. Thank you for the introduction, Bob. Yeah, I've been the editor of the Oregon City News since 2010, and
Could you hold the mic just a little closer
sure.
to your...
I've been the editor of the paper since 2010 and resident of Oregon City since 2014. I graduated from college in 2006. Pretty soon after that, got a job working for the Portland Observer. And that was my first full-time job out of high school, then came over to Pamplin Media Group. And so I just have a short presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions. Of course, I'm always happy to talk with folks offline as well. People know where to find me. They can email me or call me, and I'm always happy to answer other questions about the paper. So, one thing I get asked a lot is, how do we decide what is in the paper? So I just brought a couple of examples here, and anyone wants to chime in, what do you notice besides just the Oregon City News banner? What do you notice that's similar about these two? This just happens to be the past 2 weeks. And it's not always, they don't always look this similar, but they often do, where sometimes we have something all the way across. Does anyone want to? Yep. Oh, yes. Yeah, they're two little, we call them teases up top, where, you can see more inside. So that's very good. Yeah, I sometimes throw in a third tease, but it's this is how you would see it in those little green boxes around town. So we have free boxes all around town, and I'm just holding up the top half of each paper because it shows how people might see it. Also, sitting on the table and on the counter in front of City Hall, it's you would see the top half of the paper. So anyone else want to mention something else that they see kind of similar between the two papers?
The lead story is Oregon City.
Well, yes, let's hope so. It's the Oregon City News, but yes, no, that's a good one, Linda. Yes, everything on the front page, I try to keep very Oregon City focused. That is very true. Anything else that folks see? I don't make a secret of this, but Ingrid Aubrey knows the secret, and now I guess the secret's going to get out a little bit more because she's always sending me. She works with the TRAG group, and then in this one she had a calendar. I've done other features on her calendars, so it's very Oregon City focused, like you said, Linda, and then also it's got a great visual component to it, as of course the TRAG folks are good at. So for the centerpiece, which is what we call this block off to the side, it has a strong visual component, which is something I'm looking for to get above the fold. And then it also has to do with Oregon City, but it has to be, not just something that's visual, it has to be somewhat newsworthy as well. So, King Kong on the elevator, that is certainly newsworthy. And Ingrid kind of knows how to check some of those boxes. And you can see the same thing happening with someone having crossed the whole trail. It's visually dynamic, but also it shows someone doing something locally focused, and I like that a lot. So that's kind of what I look for there. Then there's, of course, the right rail or left rail story off to the side, and that allows me to get something else above the fold, so to speak. But also, if you can see it, Adam, I have a very lo-fi presentation, unlike John. But anyway, so yeah, that's the idea there, is to get something else that is a top story above the fold. Then, of course, with the rest of the paper, there's the down page tease, and also at least one down page story. Sometimes there are two down page stories, just to pack in more on the front page, because that's what people are going to see first and foremost if they're going to decide how to pick up the paper. And so that's a couple of things I'm looking for when I'm deciding what to put on the front page. A strong visual component, and then as Linda said, it was a very good point. It has to be having a strong Oregon City element. And then for the rest of the paper, you want to give Oregon City residents a sense that lots is going on regionally, and have a diversity of opinions, a diversity of news items that are going on, not only in Oregon City, but having a sense that there are things going on around us that affect us as well. Another thing I get asked a lot, especially in the second half of my career so far, I get asked more and more, how do you prevent fake news from happening? And it's a fair question, because newspapers certainly have been duped. It has happened from time to time, thankfully not to me yet, but there are people who will try to get something in the paper that is factually untrue, not just on the opinion page, but someone might try to get something across my desk and into the paper that is just not true at all. And so I have to definitely be on the lookout for that. Thankfully, we live in a small town, and so most people I know by face, or, I have their number saved into my phone. I know what they sound like and what their email addresses are, but it could certainly happen, and I have to be on the lookout for that, because I take very seriously the integrity of the paper, and I wouldn't want something to get in the paper that is factually incorrect. So those are, I'm just going based off of memory here, so I don't have any notes, but there was one other question that I know I wanted to cover, and in the meantime, I'd be happy to, while I'm thinking of that, take any other questions that you might have.
Circulation? What is your circulation?
Oh, yes, so thank you. That is a good question. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I am not in the circulation department, but I do know that we have several thousand. It's in the thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, and it's thousands who take the paper. There are kind of two different circulation numbers, because you've got the folks who will pay for a subscription. It's $99, and you can get it delivered to your home, and then also get full web access, not only to the Oregon City News, but everything in Pamplin Media Group. So that's 24 papers statewide. So there are a lot of folks who do pay for that, but then, like I said, there are the green boxes around town. So if you're willing to wait until it shows up in the green boxes, and you're willing to take the risk that They won't be there because people know that it's free and know to get them out of the boxes. Sometimes they won't be there, but you can always get them from the Oregon City Library as well. So they always have at least one free copy there that you'd have to check out in the Carnegie Reading Room. But so we count circulation numbers, people that pick them up from the street, as well as those that pay to get it delivered. But yeah, that is a very good question. Any others?
Denise?
Hey, Raymond. So I've been impressed by the front page news and the editorial pages. I haven't been quite as happy with the sports pages or the feature pages, because they seem to feature a lot of information not from Oregon City. And I know that's because it's a Pamplin media newspaper, and so they're kind of all grouped together, and they spread out their information. But it's just really frustrating when you don't see sports information or like the school information or Clackamas County offices information.
I definitely
find
share
that
that
frustrating.
frustration as both the editor and a resident of town. I mean, we used to have a full-time sports editor who did sports just for Clackamas and Oregon City.
It's hard to find anything in there about Oregon City.
Yes, and so at the beginning of the pandemic, they shut down all sports for a while. I'm sure you all remember that, and we lost a lot of revenue at that point. Had to lay off our entire sports editing and reporting staff. So that was company-wide right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we have been trying to grow that back. So we now have a dedicated sports reporter who covers Clackamas County as a whole, but that's one person, yes, one person who is trying to cover several times the number of teams that one person was expected to cover prior to the pandemic. So you're absolutely right. It is a huge loss for the community. What we've tried to do is get that back somewhat by having readers contribute stories, contribute actually to our sports reporting fund, just as and working through a nonprofit to actually fund some of that and get that back. That's a trend for journalism, just to because it is so hard to keep it profitable. It's actually there is a trend towards a more nonprofit model. So you get the idea. We're staying afloat, and like I said, I should know the circulation numbers off the top of my head, but thankfully, working in the editorial department, I am somewhat insulated from having to know the finances of everything. I do know that we have a lot of loyal readers, at well over 10,000 of them just in Oregon City. So that's all inclusive, and for a town that's just a little over 40,000, that's pretty good for having over a quarter of the population reading the paper every single week. Then you get. I mean, how many folks could even say that 10% of like the city website is being read, for example? Any other questions?
John?
Yeah, whenever I see the paper, I do grab it and I usually read the main articles, not always all the way through it. But a few times I've noticed farther back in it, you get the crimes in Lake Oswego and
Yes.
crimes in West Lynn. I never see crimes in Oregon City.
Yes, and that's, I will admit that is another weakness of the paper right now. We are actually going to be changing that around a little bit, and you heard it here first, that we will be, since Lake Oswego is on the other side of the river, there is, it doesn't make as much sense to be paired with them in terms of coverage as it does for, say, Canby and Molalla to share some coverage with them. So my hope is to get that back as well. It's been something that I've been hoping to build back in terms of better coverage for Oregon City. The crime beat, of course, Captain Davis is incredible at getting back to me if I have any questions about a specific crime. And of course, there are some crime stories that end up in the Oregon City News. I'd like to do more of those. And the police department has been an amazing partner in that, but it doesn't make sense to be partnered internally through Pamplin Media Group, in my belief, with a paper across the river that has so many more resources to, it's very clear the discrepancy between the two cities in terms of the number of reporters that they can hire over there. Yes, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you have any tips you can give this group about how to write a good letter to the editor?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, I would say submit a letter to the editor, because that's always the first step. I'm happy to help any of you if you're feeling a little bit unsure about your topic or about getting the grammar incorrect or whatever, because I'd like to, first of all, just encourage those submissions. And yeah, I'm happy to help in any way. If I see an error, I'm going to try to fix it before it goes to print, so that any letter writer is not going to be embarrassed by a spelling error getting into print, for example. So that's the main thing. You're not going to write a good letter to the editor if it doesn't actually go to the editor. But other than that, I would say that, keep your topic as Oregon City focused as you can, at least Clackamas County. If you want to get it seen in the paper, that's probably my main criteria, in addition to your being an Oregon City resident. If you're writing about an Oregon City topic, that's a double bonus. As far as other considerations go, I would say definitely you want to keep it as civil as possible. I mean, we all are going to see each other again, perhaps in a close quarters like this again. And thankfully, it hasn't been a huge issue in Oregon City, but I would like to be able to look you all in the eye, and I'm sure, you wouldn't want to say anything that you wouldn't be able to look that person in the eye, especially if you're criticizing other local people around here. You want to be able to feel like there's some rapport at least, and even if you're criticizing someone, you're making valid points that are backed up by factual statements. So that's what I would say about once you get over into more controversial territory. That's certainly allowed, but just do your best to keep it civil. Thank you. Any other, and thank you for the question, Christina.
I've subscribed to the paper for several years. Mm-hmm. And for some time now, they've been mentioning that the paper may be in trouble fiscally.
Sure.
So my question is, what justifies giving away so many free copies?
Would you like to be publisher of the paper, Bob? Is that what you're asking? You think you can run it better than it's been run? Like I said, I don't run the financial side of things. It's a fair question for sure. The little that I do know about the financial side of things, circulation numbers are important. So, Dennis, if you wanted to know about the circulation numbers, we have to publish them because all of our advertisers want to know what the circulation numbers are. And so when, they have to be verified independently, these circulation numbers. And so if the advertisers see, wow, we're giving away 5,000 copies a week and they're just those green boxes, we can't keep them full because, and that's literally true because they go so quickly. We could probably deliver twice a day, especially on, Thursday when the paper's just coming out, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you could probably do 2 deliveries a day, but we can't afford all those drivers. So, but the advertisers know that those green boxes are getting emptied out, and they know that their ads are being looked at by all those readers. So that's the main justification. But then there's the secondary justification that there are a lot of folks who will pick up the paper from the green boxes and then they'll see little ads or inserts. If you want to subscribe, here's how to do it. You can even send in, a little tear off from the inside of the paper and we'll send you a month free or whatever it is. So that gets people to subscribe and pay to subscribe, in addition to the fact that I think advertisers like to see lots of people reading the paper. So could it be that we can de-emphasize more of the green boxes? I think the Tribune went that direction. I just heard from our publisher that he committed to keeping the green boxes around, unlike what the Tribune is taking a lot of those green boxes off the street due to vandalism and other issues. But he'd like to see those green boxes remain in place for the foreseeable future, and which I think is a great thing because we get more readers that way, and it also is much more democratic because if you say can't afford a subscription, there are ways to get them from the green boxes or, like I said, from the library. And it just makes, even though there's a paywall on the website, it makes it so that you can, anyone can read stories that are in the Oregon City News. And then it's also good because I think you get 1 or 2 free stories a month on the website. So there are ways for the information to get out.
Well, I think that
without the
your statement
subscription.
about the value to the advertisers is a big advantage to that.
Yes.
Denise, you had a question?
I was wondering, where is the paper published?
Oh, yes, good question. So we have an office in Milwaukee, just outside of Milwaukee city limits. So that's where our main office is for all of Pamplin Media Group, including the Portland Tribune. The actual press is located in Gresham, which is
Gresham
also
Outlook.
Pamplin Media owned. Yeah, Gresham Outlook, exactly. So, good question. Locally owned and operated. That's one huge advantage of this paper.
I'm an avid green boxer, so I
Yeah.
always pick it up, but I also scour our neighborhood associations because a lot of your online articles are published there first, and I really, really appreciate that because then I'll read it again the following week because it comes out a week early. Also, you also offered a very valuable service when I went to pick up 30 copies because you did a front page article for Oregon City Parks Foundation of the Gardner School oak tree restoration. And
I wanted to get one to each one of the students because they were on the front page. So that was really, thank you very much for that service. I really appreciate
Oh, yeah,
your
you're welcome.
coverage.
So you stopped by the office, as
Yeah.
I recall,
Yeah.
in Milwaukee to pick up copies for all your students.
Yeah, that was really nice of you. That was appreciated a lot.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I've been down there twice doing that.
Anybody else? Well, thank you, Raymond. That was very informative.
Welcome.
We'll try to inundate you with articles.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Okay, our next presentation is Cheryl Rice with Friends of the Ermatinger House.
So thank you very much for having us here today, Mr. Chairman and the committee members. We're the Friends of the Ermatinger House, and I'm Cheryl Rice, and this is?
Dave McCluskey.
McCloskey. And I'm the chairman of the group, and Dave is our vice chair. And we thought it would be really, because this is a group that is really involved in the community of Oregon City, we thought as a friends group of the Ermatinger House, it would be really great to give you some information about what we do and why we do it, and some help that you might be able to provide us. So we have a little slide presentation. And so as we go through, I'll just make some commentary on that. Dave will jump in where he wants to add or where I forget. And at the end, I hope that you have more information about what we do. And if you have any questions, we'd be really happy to answer those. So we were established in 2018 as a 501c3, and our goal is really to support the Ermatinger House, which, as you know, is owned by the city of Oregon City, and it is run by the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Department. And so we have an agreement with the Parks Department to be able to do activities and events and programming and stuff in the house. When they, I'm not sure how many of you know the history of this poor house, but many of you do. So just briefly, in the beginning of 2000s, the house was falling in upon itself, literally. And the city, along with some other monies, reconstructed this house. It's not a restoration in as much as it's 100% as it would have been built, but it's a reconstruction. And they found some different things. The one thing they did find out about this house is that even though the sign says 1845 on the front that it was really built in 1843. So that was one thing that they found out about the house. The city actually reopened the house after the reconstruction in 2018, and several years before that, several of us who have been involved with the Ermatinger House for many years prior to its restoration and reconstruction, worked with the city to help to try and get the house reopened. And so in the same process, we worked towards getting our 501c3 status so that we would be, have that, so that people who were interested in joining the group, donating to the group, and that would be recognize that we've gone through the steps to be legitimized, I guess. We're not just a free floater out there taking money. Our mission has always been to support and promote the house and the preservation and the history and its heritage. And we like to show that. We've always established goals as we go through each year, and some of those goals, I don't know, what slide is this, Dave?
This is just the second one.
This is the second
So,
slide?
yeah, so we do have a presence in the community that goes way back. And Cheryl and I both have been involved for, I don't know, 30 years now.
Close to.
The house was closed for a good time, but it really is an important piece of Oregon history. You know, with the redating of the building, it's possible this is the oldest or perhaps the second or third oldest standing house in Oregon.
It is a Hudson's Bay house. If you come to the house and hear our programs, you'll hear us talk about that. And there aren't any other Hudson's Bay built houses in, I don't even know if there's any in Canada. So it might be this might be it throughout the whole world. So I just have lost my way. So I was looking through slide 3. This is slide number 3. So one of our goals is to provide different type of programming. And when we first started this, we approached the city with our goals, and we give them every year an annual report and a strategic plan for the coming year. So we tell them what we did and how we did it. And then we also then give them what we plan for the next year. Our goal is to always provide some kind of a program or an event every month. And since 2018, with few exceptions, including the closure to the public, we have been able to do some kind of programming within the house. Next slide, please. So before the house was closed to the public, we had people come in and would do different programs. All those programs were basically free. We didn't ask any admission. It was if they left a donation, that was great. And all that donation money that came to the Friends is put back into the Friends doing its programming and developing events and stuff. The one thing that I will say worked out well for us in the closure, and everybody's gonna go, oh, I can't believe anything worked out well. But we decided that it was really important to keep the house out there, to keep it so that people knew something was going on and that it still exists, and we didn't close our doors necessarily. So what we did was we created programs and did them virtually. So they were live streamed to Facebook and onto the YouTube channels. And so we were the only heritage organization, as far as I know, we're the only group, in the Parks Department or anything who provided some kind of program, some kind of virtual programming that, went out to the public, free of charge, doesn't cost anything, and we had a lot of fun in the process.
We did, and here's a couple of the examples up here. The military firearms has been very popular. That was a presentation of arms that were used from the time of the Revolution all the way through the current time. We also did a live streamed version of the election of 1858 and the problems that came out of that leading to the Civil War. Governor Lane had a big part in that. So it was instructive, and we got a lot of feedback on that. So we try to do not so many of the live streamed anymore, because that was something that we did because we had to during that period where the house was closed. But we're continuing to do that, including this last one last week that we had a nice Facebook response on that. So we're up on Facebook and also live streaming out to Instagram, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So several of the events that we started, we've actually done, they've become an annual event. So the firearms event this January, we'll be doing our 5th annual event. And we'll continue to do the live stream on that. I think there are some programs that are just really are conducive to being able to do that and provide that. Our latest live stream that we actually did was our veterans event. So the whole month of November, we had a display celebrating veterans. And it took uniforms from the 1776, the Revolution, to today, like right now today. And we had uniforms set up on the 12th. We had 2 programs that were offered, and one of them was live streamed. And the last time I checked, there had been at least 380 plus people who had at least looked at the site to see that there was something that was there. So I feel like that we're getting out there, we're doing something that people might be interested in. And every kind of event that we do, we try and put a new twist on what's going on and what the history is. So next slide. So you can see the different flyers that we have. We try and get out there using different kinds of media, whether it's Facebook. I don't know about, I think we're doing Twitter now. I don't do these things. So.
Yeah, GoDaddy is,
Yeah.
one of our financial supporters.
Yeah.
And
So we try and do different things. The one thing that we do try and do is make our events, we have some usual events, but we also then try and make our events varied to a wider audience, so that we did a gaming and gambling and bootleg gin night. And so what you would do is you came and you got to play historical gambling games. We
yeah,
played.
there's Faro and shooting dice and things like that that people don't play anymore, but they were very common during the original period of the building of this house and the 50 or more years later in the American West.
So that was a lot of fun. I think, as far as I can tell, I mean, we had a house full of people and everybody had a lot of fun. We had, hors d'oeuvres and snacks and stuff for people to use, and it was really fun to see people come out and learn history in a new and fun way. Because how many of us knew about those gambling games before? I didn't. I don't gamble anyway, but so that was really good. Next slide. So we have several other events that we continue to do. The Veterans thing was a new event for us, and it was a lot of work, but I think that it was well received. We had people from as far away as
Yachats and Bend,
and Eugene that came specifically for that event. And so that tells me that some way, the information is getting out there to people to look for different things. They look for, if they want to do gaming, we did miniatures, we do firearms, we do living history, a huge variety of things that will hopefully bring a bigger audience in to get people in. And the more people we get in to see us, the more people we hope will join us to be able to continue to provide those things.
The Christmas event over this last weekend, we had 130 people come through, something in that neighborhood.
That's kind of what we counted, but we were busy, so I'm sure we missed people.
Yeah.
But I don't know if any of you were able to go out this last weekend to any of the Heritage Holidays events on the weekend, but at the historic houses and stuff. But we were really excited. We were really I was really amazed at how many people we had come through the house, and we were busy. It's like, I need help in here, get another table, set this up, and stuff. And the volunteers, this organization is totally volunteers. There is not one person who is paid other than the thank you and the joy and that we get from being able to do the history and share that, because we really love it. So what we would ask now is that I would like to say specifically that we are really thankful that Dan has joined the tourism team, because I think it has really helped us get the message out about the house and about the activities, not just our house, but together for all the heritage sites. And I think that it's really important for the city and that to recognize how important heritage can be to this community. We have been struggling this last year in trying to renew our MOU with the city. And one of the big stumbling blocks has been their desire to have some of the funds that we bring in for themselves. So a year and some ago, we agreed in our MOU to have do a 50-50 split if we did a shared event. So say like this last Christmas weekend, they did some of the advertising and set up, provided other things besides the building. We're talking about shared event besides just having the house. That we agreed to go ahead and split whatever that is. So we had donations, whatever that totaled to, we split those donations. They are supposed to put those donations into a specific trust account that goes back directly to the Ermatinger house. Not necessarily for maintenance was our original understanding, but for things to help in programming and do other things and maybe add some things to the house. Originally, we talked about, like adding wallpaper or maybe a piece of furniture or different things that would help tell the story of the house better. So this last year, it took them a while to get back to us because we were supposed to renew by the end of March, or by the end of February. Took them a while to get back to us. And then when we saw the proposal, they added an additional amount that after 12 hours of our own event, so if we did our own event, doing all our own advertising, all our own ticketing, we were there monitoring, taking in, didn't involve the city other than the space. They were inclined to charge us either $40 an hour for the use of the house, or they wanted a 70-30 split. So we'd get 70, they'd get 30 split. And that was told to us because they have a cost recovery thing that went through and was approved and whatever. But if you look, the interesting thing in investigating some of this stuff to try and get more information was that there is nothing on their new fee schedule that supposedly was published on July 1 that shows that there's any charge for the house other than if you go in for a tour. Yes.
What does MOU stand for?
Memorandum of Understanding
And who's that with?
with the Parks
city?
Department, the City of Oregon City.
Thanks.
So that's, we've kind of gotten through, it just feels like because they're asking more of us in the money category, it feels like we're less valued as being, I shouldn't say, as being as an important part of the house and the organization and something that provides it. I mean,
We want to be a collaborative organization, and they changed some of the language in the MOU that suggested that we were actually either volunteer employees of the city, or that we were in a partnership with the city, which suggests a legal requirement. And they put in things that were considered a problem for us as far as the hours of work and things like that. We don't consider the amount of time that we put into putting these events together as hours of work. They are a volunteer donation from us in collaboration with the city who owns the historic site. So it's been difficult for us, and we're working through it. I think that Dan is helping us sort of figure our way through this. We're encouraged over the last little bit, but it's been difficult to see how 12 hours of being able to produce something at the house before they start charging it $40 an hour. There are a lot of the things where we actually don't really charge any money at all or get any money at all. And if we do, it may be only less than $100 for an awful lot of work.
so just as to give you a little bit of perspective. So in 2021, we figured we had approximately, and this is probably a low ball because it's hard for me to keep track of all the hours I spend doing things. We figured we had about 930 volunteer hours for the year for the things that we did and the events, which if you multiply it times the volunteer rate that the federal government says, which is $29.95, that's a value, if you put it in dollars, is $27,853.50. So that's a value that is tangible. It's there. So we know as a collective group that there have been some issues and stuff with the Parks Department and fees and things like that. We didn't really know about that until we had already been working on our, trying to get our MOU settled and everything. So we would just ask for the support of this committee because we think that we have a proven record of developing goals and meeting the goals and looking to the future of the House, its history as well as the history of Oregon City. That we've been able to continue to promote the House and the history through difficult times and through and learning new and different things and using different mediums and being willing to try different things. We would like to be able to offer, we'd like to continue to be able to do this without feeling that it's not valued. We would like to offer in the future and be able to help the House in some ways if they needed a new paint job on the house, and we would be able to make it work that we could help them as a 501c3 find a grant or find some things to help make that happen. If we decided at some point they wanted to put wallpaper in, that we would be able to help fund some of those kinds of things to help bring the house back, to help preserve it, to help improve it, to help expand the things that it has to offer. And we would like to be able to continue the programming and expand the programming and the reach that we currently have. And this year, even though things have been sort of rocky in some ways, I think we found some really good things and would really like to and continue to be a part of that community, be a part of Oregon City and the Ermatinger House, because as Dave said before, many of us in the group have been doing something in the Ermatinger House for more than 30 years. So we would just like to be able to continue that without some of the other stuff that makes it so challenging. So that's all I have. Dave, any other comments?
Just to clarify, when you're talking about the funds earned for the house, that a lot of it basically goes back either to Friends of Ermatinger to work on preserving the house, correct? So the intention of the money would be to go back into the house.
Yes, the treasury that the Friends has is strictly from what we have as admissions or donations or what individuals, have donated. And there's a lot of things that the individuals do that cost them money but they don't charge, but we look at it as being, a possibility there, because I know in working with other organizations and looking for other grants and things, a lot of times you need to have some kinds of money to be able to get the grant to do something else. And one of those would be, we just recently received a grant through the Metro Enhancement Grant process, and we're doing a filming project. And so when we apply for that grant, it's like, okay, this is our budget, and but we're willing to, they always want to see if you're willing to put in some money of your own to be able to do that and stuff. So we want to be able to do that as well. So that answers your question.
I have something to say at the end, but I want everyone to speak first.
I think it's commendable, your volunteering and the effort that you've applied. I'm a recent, resident here. Well, not that recent. I guess 8 years makes me a little bit longer than just showed up yesterday. And I've been to the house.
Excellent. Perfect.
And I commend the restoration and what you've imparted to us tonight with the idea of creating or inventing ways to encourage other people to come there. I think that's quite commendable. And you're very fortunate we have two commissioners here tonight. And I'm sure your effort to reach out and to try and get somebody, perhaps maybe on the commission, to be yet another hat they have to wear to give assistance to you in terms of helping to promote the house. And along with other heritage houses that the city seems to tout as very important and a very important part of Oregon City, I think it would just be advantageous for them to be on board with any kind of assist that they can bring to it.
We'd love that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I know these two very well, and they would be more than happy to be a part of that. their workload is tremendous, but yet another hat that they can wear, and maybe it would assist both the city and your efforts.
Thank
So,
you. Just as an aside, many of the members on our group are not residents of Oregon City, but they feel such value in this house and have such a history that it brings them from several different areas and stuff to come back to be able to do things at the house. So, thank you.
Linda?
I concur with everything that Dennis said, but I would like to add that I think it's a great benefit that we have Raymond Rendleman in the house tonight. Perhaps he can carry this to another area. And Oregon and City is so unique that we have all this history. We don't have to go and invent it anywhere. So perhaps the Parks Department feels a great need to make a profit or something, but yeah, I feel your pain.
Thank you. Denise?
Denise?
I have an idea for how you can bring people into the house. Do you rent it for meetings?
That would be talking to the city, wouldn't it?
The park department will get their cut.
She wanted to know if we rented the house. The city might rent the house, but it's not on their
You wouldn't
schedule.
get any money for it then, probably.
We would not, but the city doesn't even have that on the schedule. So as a fee, so if maybe you wanted to have a private little party or something, or a meeting or whatever, there's nothing on that schedule that says, I'm gonna charge you for this amount, but they're coming and telling us that after we've worked all these hours and done these things, they're gonna charge us. And we're a friends nonprofit here to
So
help
we could
them
just
do
make a
house.
donation.
Yeah, it'd be a donation from, yeah, right.
Dee Dee?
I originally took the survey about the MOUs, and now as a nonprofit, we're facing the same dilemma you are. And where we meticulously count all of our volunteer hours, and I turn in an annual report of all the hours we give to our Parks Department so they can apply for grants and use those hours towards their grants.
Correct.
So we're paying it twice here.
That is correct.
And then also, I'll just kind of throw up a possibility. Wonder if there was some maintenance that was scheduled to be done, you're working on it, and they decide to do it at a different time earlier, or I can say something out of season. It's not necessarily your house, but it has to lead other nonprofits that do things that are seasonally, but there maybe a city parks department idea of timely is earlier than beneficial for the project. And they could say it's not being done timely, but they can go and do it and then charge you again, $40 to $50 to $75 an hour in materials. So then you kind of lose your momentum as volunteers. Because they may say, yeah, well, we would like to change that plan of yours that you seem to be on a track to. So I really think there needs to be a gentler way to look at these MOUs, because we're putting in countless hours, gas money, and all the things that, we track and give to them, but we don't necessarily get the true benefit out of it as far as grants, because we're giving it them. And we work like heck to earn those matching grant funds. When we get a grant, we can't just go to the city and say, hey, can we have those matching grant funds?
Right,
No, we've got to work like heck to get those funds, and those are very hard. That should be counted in those hourly times they want to charge.
It's
We can't
interesting.
charge back. put
It's
it that way.
interesting that you mentioned about your hours, because the city wants us, to give them our hours quarterly. But the other piece of that is those hours are also reported for a nonprofit status to, a government entity, not just to the city. So, they're getting double counted in a
That's what
sense.
I said. Yeah, we're
Exactly.
getting a double dip there.
Correct.
A benefit, but we're not getting the benefit as appreciated in our way.
So not feeling the value,
Yes, and that's hundreds of hours.
correct.
You have
Okay.
900, I know we have hundreds
Dee.
also.
Will?
I have a question for you. Yep. And I absolutely appreciate, I live in an old house and I'm thinking, how much does it cost the city to maintain the house? Like, I'm just trying to think a little bit from their perspective, like, not the charging. I think it's ridiculous that they're gonna charge, for you to be in the house when you're putting on it. But like, how much does it cost to keep that, just to maintain the building? Even though it's been,
I really don't think that we know. I
Okay.
lived in one of the historic homes in Oregon City when I was living here. And just the upkeep of one that you're living in is terrific. I know that they worry about the traffic through the house and the cost that they had to put into to keep the house standing, because it was actually falling apart, was tremendous.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much maintenance it actually costs. I know they do have the house on deferred maintenance schedules for painting, roofing,
all those things.
floorboards and all that sort of stuff. So I know they're keeping track of it, but I don't think that we know what the cost of it is.
As far as that, and it's never really, it's even just figuring out what the normal usage of, lights, water, heat,
Right.
those kinds of things, we've never really got
like,
an
it seems to me
answer.
it should be so much more of a partnership. Like,
Exactly.
on both ends. Like, if you've got this fabulous, structure right in our community, close by, all these people who are willing to work for it. So it seems to me if it was more of a partnership, maybe they would back off. And I mean, obviously the city is putting money into keeping the building warm and all those things as well.
Exactly.
But
Okay, we're going to have to
yeah.
cut it off here because we're running way behind this evening, but I think Carla wants to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. I have been a volunteer myself for several nonprofits, neighborhood chair. I'm tired of the fees being inflicted on the neighborhood associations, pay to play for the kids. For our nonprofits, it's discouraging for volunteers to be involved. I would like to make a motion that the CIC wants to recommend to the commission to reevaluate the MOU fees, the fees on the parks towards neighborhood associations, nonprofits, and towards community sports.
I full-heartedly support that and second that motion.
I'm surprised we didn't all chime in at the same time.
I was waiting.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote by raising your hand. Aye. Opposed, raise your hands.
We're
Okay,
your friends.
now,
Thank you.
So let me do a technical question.
yes,
So if a letter wants to be written, it probably needs to come back to the CIC. But if it's a simple, direction email that just kind of basically said 3 sentences that were said tonight, it can go on tonight. But if you want to write a letter, we probably have to wait for the next CIC meeting to vote to
I don't
concur
think
with
a
it.
letter is necessary.
Okay.
We have 2 commissioners here who have heard our opinions and desires. I would think that would be enough maybe to get the ball rolling on reevaluating what the city is charging for.
Yeah.
Okay, that will do it then. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We hope that we see each and every one of you at the Ermatinger House for our next event. Please do come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, our next presentation is the Abernathy Green on the Rossman landfill. Seth Henderson.
Evening.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble sharing this tonight. Hey, well, it's not sharing on the, hold on a second. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Seth Henderson, and I'm here this evening representing Summit Development Group. One of your members kindly recommended to me that it was probably time to come back and give an update. It's been since, I believe, February of last year. And Chair LaSalle was kind enough to accept my invitation. So I've got about 30 minutes. Is that right? So how's everybody feeling? You ready for 30 minutes of a lot of data, hopefully? So I just passed around, when we were going through the entitlement phase, we ran 3 ads in Pamplin Media. And hopefully, maybe some of you actually saw that information, but you'll notice the Facebook address and website address. So we've been trying to get community input about the project and what should be on the site and what can we do better and what are we missing. And we attended, I think it was six events this past summer. So First City Celebration, the Wine Walk, and you'll actually find a lot of these on counters and businesses downtown. So the last time we were here, it was remote because we were in the middle of the pandemic. So many names and faces are familiar from the digital screen. But just out of curiosity, I see a couple new names. How many people listened to and were a part of the last time that we presented? Okay, so 60%, something like that. So if it works for you, I thought what might make sense is we'll spend 10 minutes and just quickly go over kind of the history of the project before we presented, run through the presentation. And when I say run through, I realize time's tight, so go very quickly through it. I'll probably stop on 3 or 4 slides that I think are really impactful to talk about. Then spend 10 minutes talking about the general development plan application that went in and what's actually currently entitled. And then spend 10 minutes addressing today, what are we working on? Does that seem to make sense as an agenda? Some nodding heads, terrific. So February 1st of last year. So what led up to that presentation and the information that was in there? So we started, there's something called a purchase sale agreement, or PSA, you may have heard the term. So that was signed in March of 2021 with the property owners for the landfill. I joined Summit Development Group in April. So I inherited this project. It was pretty much a clean slate at that point, so nothing had started. So the first 2 things that I focused on was 1, outreach to the community, and 2, start assembling the team to put together to start working on this. The community outreach was very organic. So, hey, have you talked to Liz Hannum? This potentially could impact downtown businesses. You should really talk to her about what businesses are downtown and what businesses should you avoid on the site. By the way, I'm sorry, my head's constantly going to be rotating trying to engage somebody. It's a very interesting layout. Gail, next door at the Interpretive Center. You're going to be adjacent to the Interpretive Center. How are you guys going to support one another? Have you talked to Jerry Herman yet? He's kind of our environmental guru and knows a ton about the site. Have you sat down with him and made sure your plan makes sense for the city overall? And then we looked at, in terms of putting the team together, who's worked in Oregon City previously, who's done general development plans or master plans previously. Well, as I'm going through this, our Facebook site is, I've never engaged on social media until this project, and we have the site. It is brutal. And so as we go through this, I'm going to point out some of my favorite comments that we've received and kind of counter them as best I can with logic. So one of the comments is, you're a bunch of carpetbaggers. So everybody on the project team is from the Portland metro area. Our company, we have 1 office. It's in the Tiger Triangle. The only project we've ever done outside of the state of Oregon is Block 3 on the Vancouver waterfront. So our employees are from Southwest Portland, Lake Oswego, Canby. That's where we're from. So depending on your definition of carpetbagger, I'd say we're very much a local developer. We're not a national developer. So by early fall, we had the team put together. We had our initial feedback. To date, I think we've reached out to somewhere between 60 and 70 members of the community. Probably 40, 45 have actually sat down with us. There's a lot of history on this site, and there's a lot of negativity around the site. So a lot of people didn't want to meet with us, and I completely understood that, and we backed off. But with that information we had, we put pen to pencil, or pen paper, and started to put together what this general development plan was going to be. What was our master plan going to be? And so then we get to early in the year, and we presented to the CIC, to DOCA, to OCBA, to the Clackamas County Rotary, to Metro, twice to the Planning Commission. I think there was one other as well. Oh, the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association, of course. So we had all of those prior to submitting to Christina on April 1st. So April 1st was when we submitted our general development plan. So very quickly, let's go through this. So zoning, really important one. So what we're talking about is mixed use downtown. And the MUD, which is kind of that green, you can see where the site is, and it's kind of the green that wraps around it. You'll see some purple, that's industrial, interrelated on the other side of kind of 205 there. That is by far the most dense zoning in Oregon City. So as far as the comp plan's concerned and how the city's laid out, that's where the density of the city is supposed to be. So if you read the narrative section at the beginning of the zoning section for MUD, the mixed-use downtown MUD district is designed to apply within the traditional downtown core along Main Street and includes the North End area where we are, generally between 5th and Abernethy, and some of the area bordering McLaughlin Boulevard. Land uses are characterized by high-volume establishments constructed at the human scale, such as retail, service, office, multifamily residential, lodging, or similar as defined by the Community Development Director. A mix of high-density residential, office, and retail uses are encouraged in this district, with retail and service uses on the ground floor and office and residential uses on the upper floors. And it goes on a bit, but what it's defining is you're trying to build blocks, you're trying to expand the downtown area. That is how the zoning code is currently set up. So when we're submitting our application and Mike is running us through the ringer, this is the narrative that he's reading and saying, how does your plan align with this vision? Two House bills I want to touch upon. I imagine you've probably heard about them, but House Bill 2001, the middle housing bill, right? So that is the state saying not enough housing is being built. We're going to make every city change their zoning code to facilitate single-family homes on large lots being replaced with duplexes, triplexes, cottage clusters. So they're trying to change the zoning code to produce more housing. There is another House bill coming along, 2003, and you should probably read about it. The Oregon Housing Needs Analysis was just issued on November 10th. The title of it is Leading with Production. And so what I anticipate is going to happen next, and they're discussing it right now in this legislative session, is they're going to start setting goals for production for all cities over 10,000. And it'll probably be a carrot and stick process. But what's occurring in Oregon and was actually occurring throughout the U.S. is that the cities, for instance, Oregon City would say, yes, we need housing. We'd prefer it not to be here. How about Gladstone or West Lynn? And then West Lynn would say, hey, have you talked to Tualatin? They really want housing. Or Wilsonville has a great new town center plan. Have you gone and checked that out? And Gladstone goes, well, Milwaukee's redoing their Main Street. You guys should go check out that area. And so what's happening is every city is saying develop somewhere else. And housing is not being produced. So my guess is, and Christina could probably talk to it, but I think the state is going to become a lot more engaged in forcing cities to create housing. One of the other comments that we've gotten recently is, why are you building in a floodplain? So can you move forward, please? So quickly, just take a look at this image, because this is what we showed and presented. And when we get to the application, I want to compare this to what was submitted during the application. This just shows the depth of the trash layer. So the darker colors of the pink, you're actually getting within 2 feet. So there's some areas on the site where the trash layer, the covering of it, is right up against that trash layer. This is the all the areas on site that have significant slopes. So there's all these hills that were built basically to contain the trash, and then a cap put over the top. So when we start talking about geological hazard areas, these are all slopes that we have to address. So it's another challenge within the zoning code that we have to address on site. Next slide, please. When we talk about density, which I will in a bit, if you look at the one on the right, density in MUD is capped at 75 feet. Except if you're within 500 feet of the interpretive center, it's 45 feet. So you kind of see that radius around the interpretive center. So that portion of the site is 45 feet. The rest of the site is 75 feet. By the way, we're coming nowhere near those heights, but I just want to point out what is the allowed density in MUD on this specific site. Next slide, please. Okay, left-hand side. So the 100-year floodplain is determined by Federal Emergency Management Agency flood insurance maps dated June 17th, 2008, and specifically kind of the high point of the February 1996 flood, which is 50.7 in elevation. You can see right on the left-hand side. So it's really interesting, because if you go online and you type in Oregon City, February 1996, there's a photo that pops up that shows the interpretive center back when it was still had the covers on the bonnets, and you'll see the water's right up to about the tires. And then if you go to the county buildings that run on the backside of Abernathy, it's halfway up those walls. If you look at the landfill, if you are looking for a silver lining around a giant pile of trash, it is above the floodplain in most areas. So that picture matches almost exactly what you see on the left-hand side. So there's pretty much 3 areas within the floodplain along Washington, which is where we're proposing the parking garage for residential and entertainment. We'll look at a little bit later. Along Abernathy, which is also a parking field for 2 buildings there. So parking is one of the few things that's allowed within the floodplain. And then the last area, which is right up near Redlands Roads, we're actually proposing that depression stay as natural infiltration, be broken out as a separate parcel, donated to a nonprofit, and returned to the wetlands condition. So we haven't surveyed that whole area. It's somewhere between 4 and 6 acres. It actually looks like it feeds underneath Abernathy and to Abernathy Creek. But that is a location that could be returned to, some of the wetlands area that was in Greenpoint originally. And it's also along kind of the county's idea of the trail. So you could also put probably a couple observation decks in that area for waterfowl migration. But that's the idea we've got right now. If you'd please go to the next one, we'll see if there's anything else here that we need to hit. But I think we may be able to jump over to our actual application. Yeah, so everything here you guys have seen previously, and our application, we'll get into it in a little bit more detail, but these were the images and the discussions that we had looking for feedback on hopefully some of this looks familiar. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump. So this is our application, 107 pages, not including the appendices. I think it was about 2,500 pages with the appendices.
Keep breaking my uploading agenda.
First off, this graphic that you see right here, just so everyone is aware, it is a massing graphic. So it's trying to give an idea of where the buildings sit, how they fit. they're not all going to be that white color. The whole parking garage is not going to be wide open. I mean, this is without any of the architecture. So we're going to jump around, if it's okay, Christina, a couple of pages. Can we go to 94? Again, being sensitive to the time, I don't want to run through all this. So this right here is what we submitted, and this was what was approved. So in presenting to the city commission, it has been brought to our attention that there have been developers that have said, look at this great, pretty picture, and then produce this over here. And so this is our first opportunity to say, we presented to you what we received input on, and then we took that and we submitted it directly to the planning. So we didn't make any modifications. Once we had all that information, I had incorporated it. So we're not playing any games here. We're not promising you something and then submitting something else that's to our benefit. And I just want to make sure that's absolutely clear. Can we please go to 39? So I don't know if you noticed in that last picture, but perfect, right there. That response bottom right, that's what we want to look at. So one of the other comments that has been brought to my attention is, you are a developer, you destroy nature, you're not respecting what's currently in Oregon City. We have chosen one of the most contaminated sites in the city. It is considered already by the city to have been developed because it has been impacted. What we are proposing is putting in 785 native trees to try, and that doesn't include the area that we're leaving as the natural infiltration watershed. 3,923 replacement shrubs. So we are trying to do our part to return this area as much as we can back into a condition that people can appreciate. And hopefully that's beneficial to the environment in this area, especially since a critical component of the watershed area. And we can talk about that a little bit later as well. 93, page 93, please. Can you scroll down bottom right?
Ooh, sorry, I don't know why it's not.
Whoa, that's funky. That's perfect. So I'm sure we are going to have a bunch of discussion this evening about transportation and the roads and what are we doing to upgrade the existing and remediate any impact we might have. I just want to show within here, we negotiated with engineering based on their standard cross sections what we're going to be doing at every road that we're improving. So for instance, here's Washington Street. So this is looking up towards 213. So if you're driving, let's say you're driving 205 and you jump off on 213 on the jug handle phase 1 that was made specifically to make it easier for cars to get on and off of Washington to 213 to 205 and vice versa. So you're driving down Washington, you can get over into a turn lane so you're not impacting traffic. You can turn across into the garage, and the garage that we have for the residential and entertainment is specifically on Washington Street because that's the street that you want cars on. You don't want them on Abernathy coming to Redlands and Holcomb in that intersection, especially just looking at long-term development up in Park Place. So we put that garage there for a very specific reason. So we're putting in a turn lane, 2 travel lanes, a bike lane, parking all along that, and then you've got your 5 feet for the street trees, and then 5-foot sidewalk, and then in some areas you have a landscaping buffer as well. And just understand that we are buying the land, then we're turning around, dedicating it to the city, and then we're building all this out. So everything that's on site, when you look at all the roads and all the infrastructure on site and all those utilities, that is all private. So we have to build it out. We have to put a public use easement on it. And then we are responsible for maintaining that. So we are not building this out and then saying, city, here you go, you guys maintain this long term. So we're not passing on all of that maintenance cost. Can we jump quickly to page 8, density? How are we doing on time? What do we start at? Is it 15 minutes about? We halfway through?
Well, you've used up 20 minutes.
Really? Okay. I'm gonna have to move a lot faster. So page 8 density, one of the comments that we receive is you are throwing as much density as you can on the site to maximize your profit. You don't care about the community. So just something to keep in mind. When you're looking at FAR, everybody here know what FAR stands for? Floor area ratio. So in density, an FAR 1-to-1 means that you have one level of building over 1 square foot of land. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you're building a 5-story building on an entire block, it would be a 5-to-1 ratio. So in mixed use downtown, you've got 75 feet for the majority of the site, 45 feet for that section that's closest to the interpretive center. When you average it out, it's about 6-to-1. So you could build a 6-story high building across the entire site, which obviously makes no sense, but that is how the zoning code is written. If you look at the North District, which is the most dense district, which is what we're pushing towards Washington Street, that is about 3-to-1, 4-to-1. So if you replicate that, if you replicate this downtown vision that the MUD narrative talks about, you'd be somewhere between 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 on the site. Minimum is 0.3. We're 0.49. So in terms of the 0.3 up to the 3.0 to 4.0, we're back here. So if you took every building floor and laid it out across the entire site, half the site would not be covered. Okay? So in terms of density, we're nowhere near the max, and we don't want to be. If you think about a Venn diagram, you've got 3 circles. You've got code, so that is floodplain, geological hazard, parking, transportation, natural resource overlay, so what you're allowed to build on the site. Then you have community. What does the community want to see on that site? And then you have capital. What can we actually get the money to build on the site so that it balances out? And you look at where those 3 circles cross, and on a project of this size and this complexity, I mean, we're trying to hit a very, very small area. And so we're hoping that's what we've achieved here. I'm just going to jump ahead here. 5 minutes. So we submitted April 1st. It was deemed complete April 29th. We presented to the Planning Commission on June 28th and also on July 12th. July 12th was mostly Mike running through all of our conditions of approval. And then on July 26th, unanimous approval by the Planning Commission, no appeals. And when people ask me, you know, what are you most proud about to date? It's the fact that we didn't receive any appeals on this. Let's see here. So, you, Chair LaSalle, are on the Planning Commission. You receive staff reports all the time with conditions of approval. What is the average number of conditions of approval that you typically see?
Oh my gosh, it's huge variance.
Yeah.
Anywhere from like 10 to 65.
Okay, we're at 81 conditions of approval. With all the subsections, we're up to 155 requirements. So in terms of the level of detail that staff went to and said, here is the box, and you guys are working within this box. If I look at just, I'll just take one condition of approval as an example. So we have a walkway that goes all the way across. That is just for pedestrians, right? No traffic on it. The primary east-west pedestrian way shall have the following elements: trees located at 30 feet on center, adjacent to any parking lot area, a 4-foot at maturity evergreen hedge shall be provided. The design shall allow for periodic breaks in the hedge to provide pedestrian access to the walkway. Pedestrian benches shall be located every 90 feet adjacent to the street and planting areas. All weather covers shall be provided through the pavilion and trellis elements, a minimum of 2 elements with a minimum size of 500 square feet. So in terms of the level of detail, all of this is available through the city's planning site. So if you can go in, type in Rossman landfill, it'll bring up our application, and you can go through these conditions of approval. We're about out of time, and I haven't even gotten to where we are today. So what would you like me to do? Stop and take questions?
I think it would be appropriate for questions.
Okay, great, terrific.
I'll just leave it on a general picture.
I have some questions that have been given to me from another person. Are there ways to create aspects of historic Abernathy Green along the edges of the landfill that were in fact historic Abernathy Green? I guess I don't understand that question myself. I guess if there's any historic aspects along any of the area, within that area, does anybody know?
Along in your walkways, are you going to have some identification what's going on, what was being done in there? So really stick with you have such a sensitive wetlands in that area. You have really nice possible ways where you can enhance the wetlands and use them as environmental, not only necessity, but pleasurable. So people can, little walkways around them and over them, and viewpoints, and more native. I was concerned about the native plants, and we need to get some big trees. So sometimes maybe you can widen some of the sidewalks, open them up a little bit, so you can get some bigger, taller trees in there.
So
that used to be a huge flyway back in the 80s when I was here. Back when it was the county dump. Are we going to get some county funding in for that, so we can look at something that for climate change, for instance, just the aspects all around there, we could just really utilize the.
So a lot of things thrown out there. So
sorry.
No, it's great. First, in terms of like street trees, the city has their standards, and the engineering department says this is what you're going to do at these locations. Within the site itself, we have some freedom. Not a ton, but some freedom in terms of what we can do. If you look at, I think if we go to the rendering of the application, the first one.
Oh, wait,
Sorry.
this one,
Yes, please.
sorry.
Yeah, there's a better rendering I'm going to have to find. But along the edge of the parking garage, we've actually been looking at how can we increase the canopies at those locations. So we're looking at, obviously there's a decent amount of canopy on the site, but it looks very planned, right? They're all laid out. And so how can we give some more natural variability to where are we putting these trees? And what are the size of these trees? One thing I am really excited about is the vertical park right there on that corner as you go up. So what we've looked at is getting natural basalt. So because we have ADA elevators further down, that park going up doesn't necessarily need to be an ADA pathway. So it can be meandering. There's actually, I hate to do this to you, Christina. If you go back to the first PDF. And if you scroll down, it's going to be a few pages down. Almost there. There we go. Whoa. So that is one of the images that I really gravitate towards. What are your thoughts on that? Potentially getting some natural asphalt. Obviously, this is a lot more barren, but it is showing some natural plantings and grasses, and then adding some trees to that as well to give some shade over seating areas.
Actually, I remember this, I've gone to almost every single one of your presentations. I think this is, it's beautiful. It looks very natural. And again, we don't have the aspect of tall trees that are riparian. This will eventually connect with the cove. This is all going to be, and we're losing all of our tall trees. All of our birds need tall trees, taller than 75 foot. You need the cottonwoods that get moved, so the hawks and the osprey can build their nests from. If you can put some very tall platforms up there, you might even get some eagles. You might consider dropping a sequoia or two in there that takes very little root. It only takes 6 foot of root space to plant a sequoia. I hate to think about it. Are we always working about other people's view, where the view would be nature? And I'd like to see more of that. You guys are really forward. There's no reason why we can't be like the premier example of the best resources with going to Clackamas County saying, give us some, and I can't pull out the words out of my mouth, restoration material, dollars. It was a county dump and it was unregulated. It's really, really dangerous if that cap doesn't hold and the overflow goes in the wrong direction. It could be overflowing into the cove. That's a dangerous.
So
you know what you're sitting on.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge with the site is that it was unregulated.
Yeah.
So most dumps, you know what's in it. This one you don't. You go to the DEQ website and you take a look at what gases are coming off this, what is in the leachate, and it's basically a list of all the metals that potentially could be in a dump. And so that's what the DEQ has found in their sampling of the groundwater wells.
Yeah.
The most important aspect is how do you make an impermeable cap so that no moisture is getting through and becoming leachate down into the groundwater level? And then how do you build a stormwater system, which is collecting all the stormwater on site and then regulating the flow out to either Abernethy Creek, or we're hoping, I haven't seen the city as-built that confirm it, but what's been told to me is some of that flow will actually get to the cove. So when you start talking about these hazardous algae blooms, the HABs, it's because it's shallow, it's because it's warm, and it's because it doesn't have enough flow. So one way to help solve that is, how do we take this rainwater, this stormwater that we're putting through initial filtration? So you've got your flow through planters, so it treats it, then goes into these vaults, and then that determines at what speed, at what volume is this stormwater coming out, and where is it going to? So there's a potential to figure out how do we get additional volume of stormwater into the cove, and what can that do to help return the condition of what it was.
I think we're going to have to keep moving on. Carla?
think Dennis was first.
Well, Emily, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. So this is it correct that it's 90 total acres, somewhere around there, or?
No,
Okay.
so
What is the total?
our parcel is
Yeah.
between 62 and 64 acres.
Okay,
The
62.
whole Rossman landfill, so Home Depot and Discount Tire sits on a portion of the landfill. 213 goes over the landfill. The empty lot on the far side, that's where the landfill ends. And you can actually go to that lot, sorry. You can actually go to that lot and you'll see a slope on it that goes down to kind of that, are those white oaks that are right there? And then it drops down the hill to the creek and there's a residential on the backside. But that is the extent of the landfill.
Okay, and then it's hard to tell from these diagrams, but it looks like that kind of middle section between all the, like what is in this image, like the pink buildings, that's parking lot, is that correct? That's all parking lot with those kind of like very linearly planted trees?
That's correct. So the north area, which is the density in terms of buildings to try to meet the narrative of MUD, that's pushed to Abernethy. You have an entertainment building, so that's the long building. Originally, that was going to be cinema. During our discussions with the community, it was really reinforced that it needs to be indoor entertainment. And what could that be? And actually, there's a whole nother slide I was going to show you guys about what tenants are we talking to and how is that progressing. One of the discussions we're having right now, and there should be a giant asterisk. This is a snapshot in time. So some of these tenants may decide not to come here. Who knows what the economy does in the next year? So I just want to be fully forthright. So somebody down the road doesn't say, you sat and looked and told us this. So we're in discussions with the Winterhawks. And so the Winterhawks originally said, hey, we need a new place to play. And we said, absolutely not. Can you imagine the traffic for those games? How about, what other options do you have? And they go, well, we'd love to have 2 rinks on site, one for figure skating, one for hockey. And so that is one discussion we're having. So we're looking at active indoor entertainment. Then you have kind of that half circle. That's a big community plaza. And Christina detailed to the nth degree what those materials are and how much has to be clear space. So that's an area that we'd have to look. I think it's like 5,000 square feet. So I don't know if it's big enough for any of the major festivals currently, but maybe it's a satellite location. So then there's two restaurants there with outdoor seating. Then you have 5 U buildings. Those 5 U buildings are the 5 residential buildings. The other thing that
I'm going to have you come back.
Yeah, don't go away. We have a lot of questions.
Okay, so when?
January?
Done. You tell me when to be here, and next time I will just be quiet and you guys just throw questions at me. But
Yeah, because there's going to be, in fact, I'm sure that there'll be, in our minds, additional questions generated between now and when we have you again. When is our next meeting in January?
We actually don't have a January meeting because it's January 2nd, and that's
Oh, yeah,
because
okay, so-
New Year's Day falls on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So our next will be the February meeting, which will
Be
be
the first Monday.
first Monday of February.
February.
again, you just tell me when to be here.
Okay.
And you can go to the planning site, pull up our application. On the second page, you'll see my private mobile number as well as my email.
And I think what I'll probably do is put you first in line and maybe have only one other presenter. So we can give you lots of time because
Yeah, you're
Give you lots of time, because I want to hear questions.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So I wanted to request something for next time. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of curious about, my grandpa used to do rodeos on Kelly Park, from what I told. And my grandpa died in 1975. We had ponies and racehorses. I want to know if you're acknowledging any of the rodeo history, Oregon City there. Number 2, what I'd like to know is, we talk about what would happen if we don't deal with this. Like, if you have any insight on that when you come back. And number 3 would be, so John Williams talked in an article recently about the Parker family benefiting from this development. So if you could address that concern, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so we got Parker family, rodeo. What was the third one?
And then what if we don't deal with it? What are the consequences? And the city commission's talking about having a consulting firm coming in to dealing with the cove and possibly seeing the need for this to be developed. What's the consequences if we don't have that happen, right? So, just curious. So when you come back, I'd be love to hear that insight.
Okay. Are there any other questions I should write down?
Yeah. What's the city, what are you requiring of the city to invest in your operation?
Can I have 2 minutes for this?
Oh, please, wait, let's get to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, because we still have some business to attend to. And I try to cut these off at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, we'll look forward to the next meeting in February.
Yes.
Gone too long.
Thank you so much.
No, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, our next subject is staff liaison update.
All right, let me zoom in. Let's see. So I don't really have anything in addition to what I attached, but take a look at your postcard budget. I think I amended what I missed. Whenever I get an invoice from Buell's, I usually come in and pop it into the Excel spreadsheet. I must have just missed that one. Remind everyone, June 30th is our fiscal year. So as you get close, let me know. And there is a way to request additional funds at CIC through the additional postcard budget, but plan ahead. So you aren't calling me at the 11th hour. Let's see, the 2 links I wanted to provide up to you, we have the Downtown Travel Survey, which is something that the city does every couple of years, which is how you get to and from downtown, what are the barriers, and then there's a subsection for employees to try to figure out how can we help them get to downtown and not feel like they have to park in front of their business on Main Street. So, what's really exciting about it is we received some money from our economic development department through the community showcase program. So we have 40 $25 gift certificates to downtown Oregon City restaurants. We're gonna pull from all the people that do the survey. And
It was a good survey.
we're just getting the restaurants on, so once we get them all signed up, they'll be on the travel survey website. But there is a chance for you to win a gift certificate. So, and there's 40 of them, so that's exciting. And then for people who are interested to learn more about the Emerald Ash Borer, something our Natural Resource Committee and Parks and Public Works have been really worried about and want to make sure we get the information out. There's a very informative link there, which is about a new infestation that's coming to Oregon called the Emerald Ash Borer that affects ash trees. And there is, Pete Walter was telling me all about this, but it is on the website, it shows a picture of the emerald ash borer, and then also it shows a picture of what one of the indentations are, and it is like a curved bite. So if you are worried or you think you see an ash tree that has this, there's information on the website to call in because they're trying to track the spread, and then also track how to make sure we can inoculate and make sure that they don't spread anymore. So feel free and please do pass this on to all your contacts about the emerald ash borer, and hopefully we can do our part to stop the spread. General FAQs for postcards, newsletters. As always, if you haven't signed up for the monthly e-news blast, I don't know why you haven't, but if you haven't, make sure you go on to the city's main website, and really the first couple days of each month, you'll get a nice email newsletter that talks about all the main city events, and then a really great roundup of what's going on in the library. So if you're interested in what's going on in the library, there's a great roundup each month with links. So I encourage everyone to sign up for that, and that's all I have.
Thank you. We'll go, now let's try to keep our neighborhood information really appropriate for everybody for our roundtable this evening. We'll start with Linda with Kanema.
Okay, we had a meeting, and it was a great meeting. We had met November 17th at the church. Where we were meeting. We had an excellent discussion between two members of Kanema neighborhood who have built homes in Kanema, and they're also builders. And the trials and tribulations they went through to get the homes built. These are builders who build in other parts of the city and community, and the huge trials. The two builders, these aren't subdivisions, these are just the house that I'm going to build and I'm going to live in. And it was just opened your eyes to things that they have gone through. Oh, okay. I'm done.
Dennis?
Nothing.
Thank you. Dan?
I've got nothing. I got a lot, but later.
Carla?
Did you want to talk, John?
Oh, I'm sorry. John.
He's ready to throw me out. Catch me.
Sorry.
We did last month, how we were so worried about our neighborhood that we had a very successful first meeting back in person. We had a good 15 people show up. Most of them new people, which is even better.
Oh, great.
So I was really happy about that. We had a very good presentation by kind of an unusual person. I won't mention names, just initials, John Lewis. So a great presentation from him. He's going to a lot of it again tonight. We had a great election thing going for leadership. Dan Berg is going to be the chair. Robert Malco will be the vice chair. We're still looking for a secretary. We've been looking for one for years, but it's still a problem that part. And Dan Berg was nominated to be the CIC chair, so he filled out the paperwork and get it submitted to become the CIC chair for our neighborhood. So yeah, really, really great meeting. And it's been fun, man. I've really enjoyed the time here.
Now that participation is great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Carla.
Just to keep it short and sweet, we have a meeting for steering December 13th. We have elections in January, and other than that, I'm just wanting to ask the CIC real quick, if I don't mind, real quick, if I could use some of my budget for postcards, since we're kind of condensing to quarterly postcards for 4 sandwich boards. And I'm asking if that would be okay, a motion for that, if that's possible with the CIC, if they're okay with that.
Now, I guess you caught me off guard.
Am I supposed to ask the CIC, or can I just use it, or
How
ask?
did we do it before?
Well,
Usually,
Linda did it.
Yeah,
I did it.
yeah,
I
don't I need
asked
to
her.
ask permission from the CIC to do it technically, since it's not necessarily directly going to postcards?
you mean you have to ask our permission to make the,
Sandwich boards, yeah.
oh, no, you don't have to have our permission for that.
Okay,
No, that's your budget.
okay, that's what I'm planning
Yeah.
on doing, so I'm excited. Thank you.
Okay. Dee Dee?
I don't have anything. We're good. We're gonna kill it with our beautification in our neighborhood. Though come spring, you watch us bloom.
Yeah, we're gonna bloom, big time.
Okay, Hillendale, Sarah?
Let's see, Christina, you brought us a place. I booked it for January and April. I did it wrong the first time. I was thinking March was our next meeting, but it's not, it's April. Suze is great, she helped me out. So I don't know if we'll have any people, but we've got a place, so yay. We have a steering committee meeting tomorrow, and one little piece of good news is somebody contacted me out of the blue and wants to participate. He's Tower Vista, not Hillendale, but you know, we're still working together, so there's another body. He'll be there tomorrow, I think. And something that came up, which I know we don't have much time tonight, but I'll just throw it out there quickly. William Gifford brought it to our last steering committee meeting, and you know, we're trying to resurrect our 2 associations, Gaffney, Snell not participating. There's a lot of them that are dead, right? And there's some that are doing wonderful things. I really want to bring all this
to light to the people that, you know, hey, these are available. If yours isn't active, join in. Here's how. And William suggested everybody reads the trail news. So I have contacted, apparently we're in flux in that job, the communication manager, director, whatever. We're getting a new one, I think. And so we're kind of on a delay, but wouldn't you like to have a little spot to say, hey, we had a bake sale, or because snow cones are going great, or whatever you guys are doing, your little ice cream snow social, you know. The good things will let people know what's possible. And then you also have the others that are saying, you know, hey, we're starting, come to this meeting, and then maybe you get more people. It was just a thought, and I'm still in the early stages of working on it, but.
Yeah, happy to help if you need me to.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited by the idea, and it's in my wheelhouse. I can help with writing and layout and all that kind of stuff too, so, you know, I won't be a burden to them. Just give them some more content, I hope. Anyway, I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Denise with McLaughlin.
Well, I also talked with Suze, and she mentioned the bus barn, which is a very nice meeting space, but it's not in our neighborhood. So she suggested the Pioneer Center, and Will had already contacted them, and they don't have available space for when we want to meet. And then the swimming pool has a community room. We would have to pay, like, it's at $30 or $40 an hour to rent it. Yeah, so the library, we still can't meet at the library because the gate doesn't work. They have a gate that will keep people from going into the library proper, but it doesn't work correctly. And we've been without our meeting space for 2 years now. We started asking about fixing that gate before COVID. It hasn't been done yet. And so I want to know, who do we need to talk to get that done? Any ideas?
Well, I would suggest, if I can talk, I would suggest the library director. Go directly to him and say, hey.
I'll wear my Jedi costume.
We have this problem that we've been trying to work around, and it's not working.
Yep, okay.
Will?
I,
Okay. Park Place, the only thing we have going there is, of course, the Park Place concept plan development that was turned down by the city commission. It's gone to, was it LCDC?
The Land Use Board of Appeals.
Yeah. And so we're waiting. We've taken some legal actions to have the Park Place neighborhood represented in that organization. And it's a little more complicated than what you would could possibly even imagine. But we're going forward to it. So we're hoping that we can keep a stop to that crazy development. Rivercrest, Emily.
Yeah, we had a meeting on November 17th. I think we had 9 people come. Exciting part was, like, I think half of them had never been to a neighborhood association meeting ever. So that was kind of exciting. Our first event in a while had been in August, and there was about 25 people, but that was a social event. So this was more of a general meeting. We discussed future agenda items, survey results. We also had a resident who was really interested in providing residents with the resources to remove racial covenants on their homes, which is something that I wasn't aware of. So we'll have a newsletter going out about that pretty soon. And for anyone who's unaware of racial covenants, it's restrictive language when you purchase a home in regards to the ethnicity of people who are able to purchase those homes. Of course, they don't have legal standing, but they still exist. They're really, really common.
That's crazy.
So Rolf Goldstein was kind enough to give us the resources. He had gone through that process. And so for anyone who's interested, I have a newsletter that is going to go out soon, and I can forward that to any neighborhood associations.
Yeah, Raymond, your person.
So Ralph, the resident who came with this concern, had a piece published in the paper about that. So yeah, Raymond's aware of it.
A lot of Rivercrest homes have it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, we had elections. Yeah, still continued difficulty in finding an affordable place to host future meetings, but yeah, it sounds like some of you found success with talking to Suze, so I reached out to her and have to follow up, but hopefully someplace soon.
Thank you, Emily.
Bob, I have one quick thing I didn't say. When I came in here, I didn't know a lot. I know someone didn't get complimented enough, but Christina always has every answer, everything we need, where to go.
We should be standing.
And she always keeps me well informed of what's going on, what I should be aware of too. So yeah, that's great. Commissioner Adam.
Thank you. First, one thing that I heard was about the new communications person. I got an email today that the hire has been made. And so I'm really excited about that. There is a city website update survey that is out, and I would strongly encourage you all to check that out. That was something that I was really pushing for because I think that it's just overdue for a facelift. It's pretty inaccessible, and really pushing for it to be more accessible, especially as it relates to developments in your neighborhood. And so please fill out that survey and make your voice heard on that. And on the topic of surveys, we also have the Parks Master Plan open house. This is the second open house to go over findings of some of their surveys. That is on December 5th. Never mind. Never mind. I had that in my notes for today, and I forgot that it was the same night as this. But please follow the progress of that, because that's going to be really important about how we guide the direction of our parks here in the future. And then lastly, just as we head into this next session of the City Commission, I just wanted to let you guys know that some of the goals that are pertinent to our discussions here include increasing the amount that the city gives per resident for our neighborhood association, so that you guys have the resources you need to actually communicate with your residents, because why would we have them in the first place if we weren't able to do that? And then also, this is something I've been pushing for, but hopefully in the coming year we'll be able to continue that, is the issue of having meeting spaces, and then also to make sure that we are getting rid of those charges for our neighborhood associations in these spaces. I think this was the Parks Recovery program was something that was unanimously approved by the City Commission. And I think at that time, including by Commissioner Smith, who's very involved with the Friends of the Ermatinger House. And I feel that a lot of us feel that we did not get a lot of the information presented to us that we needed to make a decision. We thought that it was going to be a for-profit sort of thing. If you're just wanting to host a party and rent one of our canopies, then pay a fee for that. But as it relates to our neighborhood associations and to nonprofits who are adding value and volunteer hours to this community, that's a whole different story. And so I appreciate all the feedback that you guys have given me as a united voice that I can push to my colleagues on the commission to get that addressed. And so I do appreciate that. And so that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Well, and we appreciate your efforts in our behalf very much. Anything else from anybody? Sorry the meeting ran so late tonight. Yes.
Just real quick, if you could address fees on to families, especially for public sports. The parents have to pay a fee alone just to keep them going. That'd be awesome, because the way it's going right now it's not equitable with families, especially families in need financially. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And Emily had something.
Yes, Emily.
Yeah, so I'm on the NRC, and last meeting we had a really excellent presentation done by the Xerxes Society for Invertebrate Conservation. They're a Portland-based nonprofit, and part of the discussion was potentially soliciting for community support for pollinator gardens and a program called Bee City. And that's something that would be really, grassroots efforts would be really essential to that. And so I think I don't know what the format is for, proposing, talk to Bob. Okay.
Yeah.
Potentially in the near future.
Email me the information.
Okay, will do.
It'd be great. Because without it in writing, this old mind of mine kind of goes way off boondock sometimes.
It's not the speed.
Yeah, right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye.